Hello everyone to the first video of a new series in which I plan to show you the backgrounds or sources of inspiration of various Yu-Gi-Oh card themes or archetypes. I've always been excited when I learned that my favorite cards were based on people, things or anything from the real world. And so today I would like to start with the topic that made me realize that there is much more behind Yu-Gi-Oh cards than you might think at first glance. On that note, have fun with the video and the Earthbound Immortals. To get you started, I'll briefly summarize the significance of the Earthbound Immortals in the anime, and then we'll move on to the underlying backgrounds of the cards. The Earthbound Immortals, known as Earthbound Gods in Japanese, are an archetype of level 7 to 10 darkness monsters that were played by the Dark Signas in Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds. In the anime, the Earthbound Immortals are evil incarnations that were sealed in the underworld 5,000 years before the events of Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds by the Crimson Dragon and the first Signas. However, these seals were broken by the Zero Reverse incident of the original arid reactor. In short, the NRD system was a perpetuum mobile that was the main energy source of New Domino City and made D-wheels and turboduels possible in the first place. Responsible for this technology was a small group of researchers within the Kyber Corporation. This group was led by Yusei's parents. According to Rex Goodwin, the original NRD reactor was used as a gateway to the underworld. It later turns out that synchro summoning causes the NRD reactor to spin faster in order to accelerate the evolution of humanity. However, if it spins too fast, it shifts into reverse and creates a gigantic explosion, the so-called Zero Reverse incident. But for now, let's get back to the monsters. The Earthbound Immortals serve as the boss monsters of the Dark Signas and are among the biggest monsters to be seen in the anime. When they are summoned in the anime, and in some video games, a pounding stone heart appears in the sky, followed by a flash of light that reveals their full form. But even at the start of the duel, they can be recognized as giant shapes from the sky. These shapes, represented by purple flames, form the dueling fields of the Dark Signas. Anyone who falls into these flames leaves the world of the living. Anyone who is within the dueling field at the time of summoning an Earthbound Immortal and is not dueling is absorbed and serves as a sacrifice. And all those gigantic forms of the Earthbound Immortals you see in the anime really do exist. They're based on the Nazca lines, a group of geoglyphs which are ground drawings in the south of Peru. The lines, the desert and the culture are named after the city of Nazca, which is not far from the desert. Anthropologists believe that the Nazca culture, which dates back to around 100 BC and flourished from 1 to 700 AD, created the majority of the Nazca lines. The Paracas culture, which preceded the Nazca culture, may also have created some of the geoglyphs. There are more than 800 straight lines in the area, some of which are 48 kilometers or 30 miles long. Damn! There are also over 3,000 geometric patterns, including basic shapes such as triangles, rectangles and trapezoids, as well as arrows, zigzag lines and waves. However, the Nazca lines are probably best known for their depictions of around 70 animals and plants, some of which are up to 370 meters long. Some of these very large depictions are only visible from an aircraft. And among the most famous of these geoglyphs are the 7 that served as an inspiration for the Earthbound Immortals. So let's take a look at them in detail. We start with Earthbound Immortal Uru. Based on an approximately 45 meter long spider made up of a single continuous line, it is one of the most easily recognizable images. As with all Earthbound Immortals, their name comes from the indigenous Quechua language family, spoken primarily in the Peruvian Andes and by the Quechua people. So you've probably already figured out what Uru actually means. Uru is the Quechua word for spider. All Earthbound Immortal cards also represent the original ambitions and wishes of their respective owners. In this case of Roman Goodwin, the leader of the Dark Signers and the brother of Rex Goodwin. The effect of Uru taking control of an opposing monster is an allusion to Roman's ability to use spiders to brainwash his victims. It also refers to how Roman switched himself out of the duel against Yusei, forcing his friend Raleigh Dawson to duel in his place. In addition, this card represents Roman's leadership of the Dark Signas, and in combination with the sign of the spider, are a code for the old NRD reactor. Let me briefly recap this so that you get a better understanding. The old energy reactor had 4 control units. A long time ago, these were designed to shut down the system completely. Each of the control units was named after one of the Earthbound Immortals and was protected by the Dark Signers, who possessed the corresponding card. The main system itself was represented by the spider mark and protected by a Roman. Next up we have Asla Piscu. Asla translates as small, and Piscu means bird, so we get the translation small bird. The card was also inspired by a small bird, more specifically the hummingbird. The representation of the hummingbird in the Nazca lines, however, is anything but small. With a length of almost 100 meters and a width of 65 meters, it is a very large representation for such a small bird. In Inca mythology, the hummingbird is considered a messenger from heaven. This probably stands for Carly's profession as a news reporter and for the messages from the future that she receives from her fortune fairy cards. Furthermore, in Inca mythology, the hummingbird represents the next step in human consciousness. This is reflected in Carly's ability to read the future with her cards. Next we have Kusilu, which translates to monkey. The Nazca monkey is about 57 meters tall and 100 meters long. It is one of the crowd favorites and also one of the most famous geoglyphs on the Nazca Plain. It is also remarkable for its foreign nature. Monkeys usually come from the jungle regions of Peru and not from the coast, so their presence indicates trade routes developed or accepted by the Nazca civilization. And if you've ever seen the national logo of Peru and wondered why a P was shown curled inwards, you probably get the idea now. The logo was inspired by the spiral tail of the monkey from the Nazca lines. Kusilu is the card of Devak, Roman's right hand. Unfortunately, I have no idea how the card is supposed to represent Devak's personality. It seems most logical to me that the card's effect of halving the opponent's life points should reflect his pleasure in enjoying the pain of others. This was shown, for example, when he used the ancient fairy dragon against Luna. Let's continue with Karayua, or however you pronounce it correctly. This name is derived from the word Karaiwa, which means lizard. The Nazca lizard is one of the tragedies of the Nazca Plateau, and here we can see why. A road runs directly through the more than 180 meter long geoglyph. This is part of the Pan American Highway, a 30,000 kilometer or nearly 90,000 mile long system of highways that connects Alaska with Tierra del Fuego with only a few gaps. When the Peruvian government decided to build the Pan American Highway, they paid little attention to the geoglyphs and built it right through the middle of the symbol, cutting it in two. However, the destruction was most likely unintentional. The convention for the Pan American Highway was signed in 1936. At this time, the lines were interpreted by many archaeologists as roads with former religious significance. Many of today's best-known Nazca geoglyphs were only recognized as such during sightseeing flights after the Second World War. In the anime, the lizard represents the model Misty Treadwell and her transformation into a dark signer after the death of her younger brother Toby. The quite repulsive appearance of Karaihua represents how Misty, who was adored for her charm and beauty, was given a very evil appearance when she turned into a dark signer. This is also reflected in her reptilian deck, which contains monsters, most of which are named after mythological reptilian and serpent-like creatures, often from Indian or Greek mythology. The remaining monsters are named after real snakes. Karaihua's effect of destroying all cards unless it was destroyed by its own effect probably represent Misty's misguided revenge on Akiza, who she believed was responsible for Toby's death, and is therefore used as a countermeasure against Akiza's Black Rose Dragon and its destructive effect. However, during the final duel between Misty and Akiza, this card's effect was never activated as it was never destroyed. Next we have Earthbound Immortal Kapekapu. Kapek translates as prince or king. Apu also means prince and was also used in the Inca Empire as a term to describe mountain spirits. Kapekapu is based on this guy here. This geoglyph, also referred to as an astronaut, giant or old man, is the main reason given by many conspiracy theorists that the Nazca lines were created by aliens. The geoglyph actually shows a resemblance to a human in a spacesuit. What exactly this human figure represents was not yet been finally clarified. Researchers believe that it is a geoglyph from the Paracas period, which preceded the later Nazca culture, and that it represents the image of a fisherman. Some claim that if you look closely, you can see that the figure is holding a net in his left hand and a dangling fish in his right hand. As Nazca is very close to the Peruvian coast, the idea of inscribing a giant geoglyph into the side of a hill to attract a passing ship and get some tasty fish in the process sounds more plausible than using the glyph to attract an alien spaceship. Given the aforementioned coastal location and the importance of fish in the region, this seems a reasonable theory. Kapakapu is the card of Kellen Kessler and represents his desire for revenge on Yusei. The card's effect of inflicting damage to the opponent equal to the attack of the destroyed monster represents Kellen's desire to make Yusei suffer the same pain and agony he suffered when he was betrayed and abused by the sector security while he was imprisoned. Next up we have Chacachalua, which is based on Chugichalua, the Quechua word for anchovy. This card was inspired by the geoglyph of the whale. As a coastal culture, it is not surprising that the Nazca people worship the largest creature of the sea. The whale geoglyph has a simple design, but is instantly recognizable from the air thanks to its well-defined fins. Chacachalua is Griga's card, and with this card, I think it's very difficult to make the connection between the effect and Griga's wish or goal. I think it has something to do with his missing siblings and the people he protected, but I'm not sure. If you have any ideas, feel free to let me know in the comments. Let's move on to the last Earthbound Immortal, Viracocha Rasca. The name of this card is probably based on Viracocha, the creator god of the Inca mythology. The geoglyph that represents him is the condor, which is one of the largest animal figures with a length of 130 meters and almost exactly the same width. In the anime, Viracocha Rasca was the largest of the Earthbound Immortal monsters and also the largest geoglyph there. The monster is based on the Andean condor, one of the most sacred animals in Inca mythology, one of the national animals of Peru, and the national and most worshipped animal of Ecuador. Viracocha Rasca is the card of Rex Goodwin. Yes, that guy again, who only revealed himself as the main antagonist towards the end of the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. The monster represents Rex Goodwin's desire to rule the world. As already mentioned, it is modeled on the Andean condor, the largest flying terrestrial bird in the Western Hemisphere. This reflects Goodwin's enhanced and slightly exaggerated physique when he revealed himself as a dark signer. In Andean mythology, the condor is associated with the sun deity, who is considered the ruler of the upper world, and in many Andean cultures also symbolizes power and health. This reflects Goodwin's desire to become the ruler of the world with the power of the Dark Signers as well as his Inca deck. Technically we're done now. However, I would like to mention another Earthbound Immortal here, Red Nova. He is the strongest of the Earthbound Immortals and is known for being a mercilessly brutal demon, which made the Dark Signers afraid to use his power. Jack Atlas managed to seal him in a card. By fusing it with his Red Dragon Archfiend, Jack created Red Nova Dragon. Red Nova is clearly different from the other Earthbound Immortals, as he's not a stylized version of his Nazca lineage, the Serpent, but a massive demonic figure. And there is probably a valid reason for this. At the time of his first appearance, the Nazca geoglyph of the Serpent was pure fiction and an invention of the writers. Almost 6 years later, in 2014 however, a sandstorm uncovered more geoglyphs, including a snake. Now that we have uncovered the originals of the Earthbound Immortals, the question remains, how were the Nazca lines created and what was their purpose? The desert soil around Nazca is covered with a layer of iron oxide coated stones, which is responsible for the rusty brown color of the desert. The ancient people created their geoglyphs by removing the top layers of rock and exposing the lighter colored sand underneath. With little rain, wind and erosion in this area, the geoglyphs have remained largely intact over the centuries. Recent research suggests that the purpose of the Nazca lines had to do with water, a precious commodity in the arid areas of the Peruvian coastal plain. The geoglyphs were not used as an irrigation system or as a sign to find water, but probably as a part of a ritual to the gods, an attempt to bring the much needed rain. This theory is supported by the various animal representations, some of which are symbols of rain, water, or fertility, and have also been found at other ancient Peruvian sites and on pottery from that time period. In 1994, the Nazca Lines were declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. To this day, new geoglyphs are discovered on a regular basis. And although the geoglyphs have been studied for more than 80 years now, they still pose many mysteries for researchers. In many ways, the Nazca Lines remain a mystery from a long gone era.